This episode of the Goldmine Podcast is brought to you by Creating the Best Version of Me, a journal designed for ambitious Christian women who are seeking to increase their self-awareness, find purpose, and embark on the next level of their personal evolution journey. As entrepreneurs, career women, mothers, leaders, world changers, it is so important that we invest in our mindset and well-being, and journaling is one of the simple but powerful ways of doing that. This isn't your typical blank page journal. Besides the carefully curated morning and evening prompts, you'll also find a primary aim questionnaire that is designed to help you clarify your purpose, and a whole section of affirmations to help you retrain your thinking and speaking into positive patterns. This journal is easy to use, has plenty of room for writing and reflecting, and guaranteed to help you become the best version of yourself. You do not want to go through 2019 without this journal. Buy your copy on Amazon today. The link is in the show notes. You're listening to episode 57 of
The Goldmine Podcast.
As women, we have to invest that time in getting to understand who we are.
Be ambitious, be bold, create the life of your dreams. This is the Goldmine Podcast with your host, Adrienne Dion.
Hey you guys, welcome to another episode of the Goldmine Podcast. I am excited to be back with you guys this week. We're the last week of June, and I don't know how I feel about that. To be quite honest, the year is flying by. We have 6 more months in this year, and 6 months in this decade. So if you ain't got your ish together, I think that it's a good time to reevaluate things and to do that right now. I just want to also start this episode out by saying, if you haven't listened to last week's episode, you are doing yourself an injustice. That's the first order of business for getting your ish together. If you haven't, stop what you're doing and go listen to that episode, turning my test into a testimony with my friend Davon Woodley. It was an amazing episode. We got so much great feedback from that episode because it was just so inspiring just to see his story and learn about his journey. And that's what you need to do. You need to stop right now if you haven't already listened to that episode, because it was an amazing episode and you will not regret it. A lot of you guys are already aware, if you follow me on IG or if you listen to the podcast on a consistent basis, that I am getting married in August. And so that's coming up really soon. But what's really ironic about that whole thing is that I used to be a huge commitment phobe. Like, I used to have a huge fear of commitment. And I think that it's a lot of people who struggle with that as well. The average person changes careers an average of 7 times in adulthood. 41% of all first marriages end in divorce in America. And multitasking is just a way of life for most people. We rarely give the fullness of our presence to anything. We even communicate in a way that's undemanding with text messages and emoticons. Like, we just don't like to be committed to anything. So I think that most of you guys can agree that having commitment issues is a common thing these days. And I wanted to talk about this because commitment is so important when it comes to us accomplishing our goals and creating this life that we really want. It's the foundation of accomplishment. So I think that it's really important that we take a look at commitment and really talk about it for a second. When you hear the word commitment, what comes to mind? Most of us think about obligation and restriction. Well, it's defined as a dedication or an obligation that binds an individual to a particular person, cause, or course of action. Now, if you're like me, I'm hearing that and I'm just like, bind. The word binding is scary. Like, it's just, it's not a good look. And so, like, for most people, I was afraid that committing would mean giving up my independence. And if you know anything about Aries, independence is everything to me. I lived by keeping my options open. I made soft commitments just in case anything better came along. And I just carried this whole pattern of starting and stopping things for my whole entire life. And of course, whenever we struggle with anything, it's reflected in our life. You can see it in our day-to-day life. So, for example, with my career, I travel with my job. I was paid to go into hospitals that needed help for short periods of time. And I love that because I didn't have to worry about any of the politics, liking my boss or any of that type of stuff, because I just knew that there was an end coming around the corner. When it came to furthering my education even, I found a master's program that was online because I just couldn't imagine, being in Birmingham for another 22 months. Like, I had already been there for 4 years. I was bored and I was ready to move on. And so I found something that really, it complemented my fear of commitment. Now, although I'm not just referring to commitment issues centered around intimate relationships, mine definitely showed up there too. When I think back, I always seemed to be attracted to guys who were unavailable. And when I say unavailable, I mean like those guys who I just knew wouldn't be long-lasting partners. So, for example, they were either long distance or had huge religious differences, or, they were sometimes even in another relationship. Don't judge me. But sometimes they even stated like they just didn't want anything serious. And it seems crazy because I was always attracted to those guys. And with every single person, there was always a red flag where I knew it wasn't going to work. And if I'm being honest, I knew deep down that those relationships wouldn't work, but I was just comfortable because I didn't have to worry about committing long term. Now, I am not a relationship advisor, but I do think talking about commitment issues are important because how you do one thing is how you do everything. A person who finds it hard to commit is going to experience that struggle in other areas of their life as well. They'll have the same habits when they're pursuing their goals, when they're advancing their career, or even when they're trying to create meaningful, long-lasting friendships. Now, most people aren't just walking around saying, yup, I have commitment issues. So how do you really know if you have a fear of commitment or not? Well, I wrote down a list of characteristics that I believe really shows a fear of commitment. And a lot of these were things that I identified with, as well as just some research that I've done. But one of the things is that you have a hard time trusting your own judgment. You rarely make or set plans up for weeks or months in advance. You're known to be flaky or inconsistent. You frequently take the approach of, I'm just going to see what happens, or you're just going with the flow. You are a poor communicator. People always say you're hard to reach or hard to catch up with. You have a bunch of people in rotation. And when I say this, I mean with friends and intimate partners. You're indecisive, or you're extremely picky, or you frequently nitpick. If you identify with any of those things, chances are you probably have a fear of commitment. Now, those aren't like all of the characteristics, but those are some that are pretty pertinent. So if you're like, oh, I identify with a lot of those, you can do your own research and just figure out if this is something that's a real struggle for you. Now, commitment issues can stem from a lot of different things. Maybe you experienced your parents' divorce when you were younger, or you were in a relationship where somebody cheated on you in the past. Your commitment issues could also have stemmed from a past situation where you put your all into something and it failed. So now you're just afraid to be vulnerable again and risk being hurt again. And for me, that's exactly where mine came from. So trust me, I get it. Nobody likes to be hurt, and it's just human nature to protect yourself. So if that's the case for you, I really want you to realize that everything you work on and work hard to do is not going to work out and be successful. Like, some things are just not meant to be, no matter how hard you work at it. But living life wondering is just pure misery, and we don't have time for that. We only have 6 months in this decade left. We've all heard the saying that it's better to try and fail than not to try at all. And I really come to find this to be so true. Life has a funny way of teaching you things. And looking back, I can really attest to the fact that no effort ever comes back void. So even in the so-called failures, I've always learned something valuable that, made me better, or it opened doors to something better and just propelled me forward. So I'm pretty sure if you look back and really assess things, the same is true for you too. No matter where your commitments stem from, it's important that you face them head on because, like I said earlier, commitment is the foundation to great accomplishments. When it comes to commitments, I believe that people have bad experiences because when they decide to make a commitment, they're really making promises about behaviors and outcomes, but they ignore the process necessary to achieve that goal. That approach to commitment is just really impossible to achieve. Even at the beginning of my relationship that I'm in now, I was committed to the goal, which was a long-lasting relationship, but not the process of making it happen. Because anytime things got hard or they required extra effort, I was ready to let it go. I had one foot in and the other out. And that's how a lot of people are with their businesses, with their goals, and with their relationships. To me, it was all about preserving my independence. I wanted to have the freedom to leave whenever I wanted to. But if you really think about it, that is exactly the opposite of what commitment really is. Both of those things cannot exist in commitment. So, of course, that explained the reason why, in the beginning, my relationship was failing. Nowadays, we are so entitled and so self-centered. We're always talking about what we deserve, and, we're told to never settle and only accept the best. And if it's not perfect, let it go. And, although it's a very popular concept, I can only speak from my personal experience, and that approach just did not work for me. It wasn't until I made the decision to fully commit, meaning I got rid of the option to leave. I said, this is a relationship that I want and it has to work. And that was when I was able to actually find ways to fix problems instead of using them for excuses to run. Now, I'm using my relationship as an example, but I want you to think about it in terms of everything you want to accomplish. How different would your life be if you stopped making soft commitments? If you got rid of your plan Bs and actually stuck with the process until you saw results? Because, if you have a plan B, you really aren't committed. There is so much power in committing. Even when you don't know the how, once you get focused and you eliminate everything else and you decide on what you want, your brain starts working because it was designed to find answers and to solve problems. That's one of our superpowers that God gave us. But our brain can't work at its full potential when you're out here just going with the flow. You know what I'm saying? A lot of you guys don't commit out of the fear of making the wrong choice. But I always question this because I'm just like, how will you ever know if it's truly the wrong choice if you never go all in and see it through? Personally, for me, I don't believe in wrong choices. Even if things don't work out the way you expected it would, it'll lead you to another open door. It'll lead you to the next thing that you're supposed to do, because that's just how life works. You have to change your negative perspective on commitment. Yes, commitment comes with limitations. Yes, it comes with boundaries. But those limitations and boundaries, they aren't intended to trap you or to make you stagnant. Instead, those limitations and boundaries, they give you freedom to focus, to explore, to learn, and to grow. I think that's the most shocking thing about committing to a specific goal. If you box yourself in, then you'll begin to break out and achieve something greater than you ever imagined. You can set all the intentions in the world. You can have desires. You can write down affirmations. You can write out your plan for 2020, already. But without commitment, nothing will stick. Commitment gives you access to the fuel and the focus you need to bring your intentions and your desires into form. We have 6 months left in 2019. What are you going to really decide to commit to? And I'm not just talking about, again, writing down a list of promises and behaviors you plan to take, because that's going to fizz out as soon as your willpower and your motivation dies. I'm talking about being fully committed to the goal and to the process, no matter what it takes. Taking out all the plan Bs and just going all in. I'm talking about not wasting time on, the ifs or planning failure before you even get started. Because that's what a lot of people do. Before you even start trying, you already like, well, if this doesn't work out, you can't do that. I'm talking about not taking no for an answer and only adjusting the plan, not the goal. The reality is, even though you may have a fear of committing, you are always committing to something. Whether that's committing to the belief that you can trust people, the belief that, you can accomplish that goal, or just committing to the perspective that something can only happen one way. You are still committing. You're committing all the time. So really what I really want to say is just exercise your right of having a conscious thought and commit to something that's going to actually serve you and produce the results that you want in your life. There is a freedom in committing. Don't let anybody tell you any different. I'm talking from experience. And know that committing isn't just a one-time thing. It's a choice that you have to make and continue to make every single day. That's how you overcome the urge to quit when things get hard. If you consistently commit to whatever it is that you're trying to do. And you can commit to things that you're already doing. It just really keeps the fire going for you. I want to leave you guys with this quote by W.H. Murray. It says, "Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits to oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would have never occurred otherwise. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance which no man could have dreamed would have come his way. Whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin now." I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. If you're listening, go ahead and screenshot, share it on your social media feeds and your stories so that we spread this message to as many people as we can. I hope you guys are having a beautiful day and enjoy the rest of your week. And I will talk to you guys in July.